History doesn't always collapse because of 100 bad decisions. Sometimes, one single mistake is enough. In 1979, a global superpower believed it could win a short, controlled war in a poor, landlocked country. The plan looked simple, the intelligence looked solid, the resistance looked weak. That country was Afghanistan. That superpower was Russia, then known as the Soviet Union. What followed was not just a military failure. It was the beginning of the end of an empire. By the late 1970s, the Soviet Union was one of the two most powerful forces on Earth. It had nuclear weapons, massive armies, satellite states, and global influence. From Eastern Europe to Central Asia, Moscow believed it had learned how to manage power. Afghanistan, on paper, looked easy. A friendly communist government was already in place, installed after a coup. Internal opposition existed, but Soviet leadership believed it was disorganized tribal resistance, nothing the Red Army couldn't crush in a few months. The goal was not occupation. The goal was stabilization, replace leadership, secure major cities, withdraw quietly. That assumption, that Afghanistan could be controlled like Eastern Europe, was the first mistake. Afghanistan was not Poland. It was not Hungary. It was not Czechoslovakia. Afghanistan was a maze of mountains, valleys, villages, and tribal loyalties older than modern states. Authority came from local leaders, not distant capitals. Loyalty was personal, religious, and cultural, not ideological. The Soviets underestimated three things: terrain, mountains neutralized tanks, air power, and supply lines. Culture, Afghans viewed foreign soldiers as occupiers, not allies. Faith, resistance was framed as jihad, not politics. This wasn't a rebellion that could be negotiated away. It was a war that would never fully end. In December 1979, Soviet troops crossed the border. Within days, Kabul was under Soviet control. Afghanistan's president was assassinated. A new, Moscow-loyal leader was installed. From a military perspective, it looked like success. But outside the cities, something was happening. Local fighters, later known as the Mujahideen, began organizing. Not as a unified army, but as countless small groups. They knew the land. They blended into villages. They attacked supply convoys, then vanished. The Soviet army was trained for conventional warfare. Afghanistan offered none. Months turned into years. Each year brought more troops, more spending, more casualties, but no victory. Soviet soldiers faced ambushes, landmines, and invisible enemies. Morale collapsed. Drug addiction rose. Desertions increased. Coffins returned home in secret, because the government feared public backlash. Meanwhile, the outside world reacted. The invasion shocked the West. It confirmed fears that the Soviet Union was expansionist and aggressive. And that opened the door for the second catastrophic mistake. The United States saw an opportunity. Not to fight directly, but to bleed its rival. Through covert operations, the US and its allies began funding, training, and arming Afghan resistance fighters. Advanced weapons, including anti-air missiles, began flowing into the mountains. What followed was one of the most expensive proxy wars in history. Every helicopter shot down, every convoy destroyed, every year the Soviets stayed. The war was no longer about Afghanistan. It was about breaking a superpower. Wars not only fought on battlefields. It's fought in budgets. The Soviet economy was already struggling. Central planning was inefficient. Innovation was slow. Consumer goods were scarce. Afghanistan drained billions of rubles annually. Oil prices dropped. Global competition increased. At home, citizens waited in lines for basic goods while money burned in a foreign war. Few understood. Afghanistan became the Soviet Union's Vietnam, but worse. Because unlike the US, the Soviet system had no flexibility. Wars destroy more than armies. They destroy belief. For decades, Soviet propaganda claimed moral superiority over the West. Afghanistan exposed the lie. Soldiers knew they were losing. Families knew the truth. Whispers spread. If the Red Army could not win here, what else was false? By the mid-1980s, Soviet leadership realized the war was unwinnable. Withdrawal began in 1988. In 1989, the last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan. The empire returned home weaker, poorer, and humiliated. 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Afghanistan was not the only reason, but it was the turning point. It accelerated economic failure, destroyed military confidence, exposed systemic weakness, empowered rivals. One invasion triggered a chain reaction that reshaped global power. The Cold War effectively ended not with a nuclear strike, but with a miscalculated war in the mountains. The Soviet leadership believed power guaranteed control. They were wrong. Afghanistan proved a brutal truth. You can conquer land, but you cannot conquer will. That single decision in 1979 didn't just cost lives, it ended an empire and created a new world order where the United States emerged as the sole superpower. All from one mistake.